Hi, welcome to part 2 of The Ant and the Grasshopper. Today we're going to continue with our learning targets. I can make connections to identify similarities between the text of a story and a visual representation of the text. And I can show I can understand by finding connections between the words in the text and the illustrations. I know I will have it when I can find specific evidence in the text and explain how both the illustrations and the text work together to tell a story. Today we're going to be focusing on finding specific evidence in the text and explaining the illustrations and the text. So let's go ahead and look closer at our story, The Ant and the Grasshopper. You just finished rereading it, so we're going to take a closer look at the illustrations, which are really, really wonderful. So we're going to start on page 108 and 109. Now, 108 and 109 go with the scene 1 from our story. Remember, we're looking at a drama, which is kind of like a play. And this is what the people are saying to each other. We also have in our play stage directions, which are in parentheses and italics. Now, these are not said out loud usually during a play, but they're depicted in the scenery as well as the actors who are telling the story. So, but both the words of the characters and then the stage directions can help us understand the story better. So let's go ahead and look at our question that we're going to answer. The setting of the story is very important to the plot. How do the illustrations on page 108 and 109 help you understand more about the setting at the beginning of the story? So the key part here is we're looking at the beginning of the story. We're not looking at the illustrations for the whole story. And it tells us specifically we're looking at 108 and 109. So let's go ahead and look at the illustrations on 108 and 109. We can see it's very green. There's lots of water. Our friend Grasshopper is relaxing over here, and all the ants are collecting water. So let's go ahead and restate our question before we answer it. So I'm going to take out my question words and my question mark. The illustrations, I'm going to go ahead and take this part out on page 108 and 109. That's not necessary. I'll include that information when I cite evidence. So the illustrations help me to understand more about the setting because, and then I'm going to go ahead and take out that part too. Actually, I'm not going to take out all of that. I'm just going to take out, oops. I'm just going to take out of the story. So the illustrations help me understand more about the setting at the beginning because, all right, what do the illustrations show me? Well, they show me how wet it is specifically. Now, if we go back and look at the text, that says the setting is on the African grasslands, the present. Before we start scene 1, it says, it is raining heavily on the African grasslands. Termite turns to see the audience. So key part, it tells me about my setting. It's raining heavily on the African grasslands. And it shows this in the illustrations because there's lots of water and I can tell it's been raining a lot because everything is green. And usually when things are green, they've been getting lots of water. So the illustrations help me understand more about the setting at the beginning because there is a lot of water and green plants in the beginning. Okay, alrighty, so let's go ahead and look at where else in the text does it talk about this. So let's go ahead and look at this on the next page on page 110. There's a little exchange between our friend Grasshopper and Ant that talks a little bit more about this. Um, So Ant says, you should be collecting water for a time when it is unavailable. Instead, you lie here without a care for the future. Grasshopper laughing. Oh, don't be so serious, buddy. There's plenty of water now, and that's all that matters. You need to relax. You're much too tense. Why don't you make napping your new specialty instead of this silly toil? Stop working so hard all the time. Ant shaking his head as he grows frustrated. The rainy season will not last forever, Grasshopper. Your carefree attitude will disappear with the water, and soon you will regret being lazy and wish you had been more energetic. So this tells me that in the African grasslands there is a rainy season and probably a dry season because the ants are collecting water for later when there isn't as much. So um, we can see from here that the water will eventually disappear. So in the text, it says that there is a rainy season and dry season in the African grasslands. Okay, this shows that water is an important part of the story. Okay, because it's mentioned in the text as well as in the illustrations. Okay, so that's us looking at the illustrations for scene 1. Okay, let's go ahead and look at scene 2. Scene 2 is on page 110 and 111. So again, the setting is very important to the story. How do the illustrations on page 110 and 111 help you understand more about the setting of the story? I'd like you to go ahead and stop and answer that question and then check your work. Okay, great. Now that you have typed in your complete answer, let's go ahead and check your work. So we should have restated the question. So we're going to go ahead and take out some unnecessary information. The illustrations help me to understand more about the story at the end because. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the illustrations. So we notice at 110, everything is really, really brown and dry. Our friend Grasshopper, you can tell he's sweating. The ants kind of are in a hill, and look at all the plants. All the plants are dead. So this tells me that right now, unlike on page 108 and 109, where it was lots of water and everything was green and pretty, right now there's not a lot of water. And if I go back and look in the text, it says, a few months later, the plains are now dusty, dry, and brown. So it looks like all of the water disapparated and that there isn't much water left for the animals or for the plants. So the illustrations help me understand more about the setting at the end of the story because The illustrations show how dry the grasslands are. Okay, and in the text it says, well, if we look on page 111, it says, Grasshopper begging wildly, please, Aunt, I am so thirsty. There isn't a drop of water anywhere. Then Aunt says, we ants worked hard to collect this water, but we cannot let you suffer. Do not think us selfish, but we can only share a few drops with you. I warned you that this time would come. If you had it prepared, you would have not been in this situation. So we can see from Grasshopper, he's really, really, really thirsty because he can't find water anywhere. However, the ants have water because they collected it during the rainy season. So in the text, it says that the grasslands are dry without water. Okay, and this shows that Grasshopper should have prepared for the dry season. Okay, now yours probably won't look exactly like mine, but you should have restated the text just like me. You should have cited text evidence. You could always put the page number or the paragraph number if you wanted. And you should have explained why that evidence was important. Even though we're moving on to a different skill, we still need to use the skill of race, which is restate, answer, cite, and explain. Because we're going to be using this all year long to show that we are looking back in the text for our answers. Okay, that is it for today's lesson. We will be practicing this the rest of the week, so make sure you remember to use race, look at the pictures, and in the text.